Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining. I did promise to do a live video, and there's a lot to discuss. Latest development with the Rome War protest, and I'll just give my commentary, and we'll just speak on different issues that are coming up within the Rome War protest. So, before I start, I think it's important to, emphasize that a lot can happen in a week. A lot of developments within a span of 24 hours, 48 hours. A lot of developments. So the Oromo protest is shifting by the moment. As far as the latest development with OLF leader, that's pretty much he's on house arrest. That's the latest news. Joar still under arrest. Bekele still under arrest, and various Oromo individuals. Politicians are pretty much neutralized here, and they're currently under arrest. So there's a lot of at stake. There's a lot of danger coming for Oromia. I think one of the dangers that I want to discuss is that right now, because the OLF, OFC, and Jawar Mohammed and all these Oromo leaders are pretty much neutralized, Oromia doesn't have a vanguard, a centralized organization to pretty much guide the politics, the direction, to pretty much the strategy, to pretty much engage the media. It's pretty much scattered. The diaspora is showing different factions and a different approach. There's a lot of pretty much there's nothing centralized, and that could be dangerous for Oromia. Currently the diaspora is doing a good job protesting, and then that's important. But there is a danger that without a centralized vanguard to lead this protest, it can be hijacked by individuals who are from external, parties. Even Washington can pretty much hijack this protest towards something else that is not of interest for the liberation of Oromia, liberation of the collective interest of the Oromia people. So there is a danger that without a vanguard itself to guide the Oromo protest, it gives you vulnerabilities, and people can make the Oromo protest pretty much push it to a direction that will not serve the interests of Oromia long term. So that is a concern. And also, I want to discuss this latest issue that we have seen with this journalist Tom Gardner, who has a track record of putting out problematic issues and views against the Eritrean state, the Eritrean community, Eritrean nationalism. He has a track record to the point where he has not been challenged. He's been pretty much given a permission to just talk reckless about Eritrea and the state all these years. And I'll give you a clear example. We Eritreans, we Oromos have to defend our narrative, our state. Consider Oromia as a nation state, and we have to defend the Eritrean state in this narrative. We must, I'm not saying we as an Oromo, but the narrative that is pretty much set by the Oromo protest has to be defended, and the Oromo nationalism has to be defended. And Tom Gardner and his associate and the Abyssinian quote unquote journalist, they are a problem. We collectively, we Eritreans, we Oromos have to see that people like Tom Gardner, who feel comfortable it's an act of violence to lecture us about our own narrative, our own experience, our own history. So this guy is interjecting into the Oromo conversation, telling another Oromo scholar, your voice doesn't matter, your historical point of view does not matter. So we Eritreans, Oromos, have to collectively, and all the people in the southern nations, have to defend our nationalism, have to defend our historical narrative, which is collectively is the same. We have an issue with the system itself, the mythology itself. It's a violent history. So when you have individuals like Tom Gardner, who is just blatantly trying to weaponize this issue of ethnic unrest, ethnic violence, to silence Oromo nationalism, Oromo nationalist voice, Oromo scholars, Oromo historians, to just pretty much a term that everybody historically has known. He's trying to connect this issue of the Nefka people, or the system itself, the term itself. It's historic. Neftenya. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing this. Amharic. That's a colonial language I don't speak. So this term itself has become a controversy, and he's associated it as a racial slur, or trying to make it seem like this is targeting the Amhara people, when it's just a historic term. It is part of that legacy of Melik and the legacy of the Abyssinian settlers who, after Melik colonized and conquered Addis Ababa, who is to pretty much enforce these the settler colonialism by violent means. You need people in place to guard these positions, to make sure that the conquered people are able to submit. You can't. People just expect that. Oh, okay. Melik just invaded. We're just gonna give up. There was still gonna be resistance. So you need these elements after the Melik conquers and pretty much subdue and commits a massacre. You have to make sure the population are agreeing, or making pretty much are going along with the rules and regulation of the settler colonialism that is in place by the Abyssinians. So this term itself has become a controversial by these journalists in Addis Ababa, and they're trying to weaponize it to silence Oromo nationalism, to silence Oromo narrative, the historic narrative that everybody's aware of. The fact that there's the history of Abyssinian settlers who were there initially by force, by the gun, by the barrel of the gun, were pretty much there to dispose or pretty much push out the Oromo original landowners and make sure that Abyssinian settlers from the north are able to use the land. So this is a growing controversy that Tom Gardner is opposing against the Oromo scholar Awul Alul. I'm sorry if I mispronounced it. But yeah, I think this is one of the controversial issues that we need to discuss as well. So let's see here. After I highlight these issues, I will pretty much go through the timeline and further talk about different issues that I've seen throughout the whole week. All right, let me just show you share my screen. Okay, this is the tweet that everybody's aware. This is my take. A Western hotel journalist who is Tom Gardner and these other establishment trying to lecture an Oromo scholar who has a lived experience about what his people have gone through and what does that term mean. The term itself, Neftgenge, I'm mispronouncing it. I can't speak the Amharic colonial language. I'm not Ethiopian. I don't really reflect to this language. It is not my responsibility to pronounce it correctly. Neftgenge, I'm not gonna apologize. Yeah, but this term itself is historic. It is not anti-Amharu. It is associated with the original Abyssinian, the arm handler, the people who, when the settler state Addis Ababa was pretty much set up the post, even in the southern nation. How are you gonna pretty much control the land? You need arm. You need people willing to pretty much guard, make sure that the indigenous population is able to accept this rule set by Melik, the Abyssinians, and the fact that if you had more Abyssinian come in to use the land, they pretty much agree to it. So how do you do it? You have these elements. People from the north come into these indigenous areas, such as Addis Ababa. So this is historic, and this is ugly truth. This is the ugly truth that to this day there are people who are of that history. They take pride in it. They take pride in being of the original people who were the gun holders. There's no pride in that. You came as looters. You came as pillagers. You came as pretty much wiping out indigenous population. There's no pride in it. Your legacy is blood. Your legacy is genocide. There's no, we should not be apologizing to nobody for publicly stating that your history, you came in, you pretty much wiped out the Oromo population and the southern population. There's no pride in this. So Tom Gardner, the fact that you're trying to associate this into some Hotel Rwanda ethnic unrest, ethnic conflict in order to demoralize Oromo nationalism, to demonize Oromo nationalism must be rejected. All Oromos should be pretty much outraged by this. This guy is anti-Oromo protest, anti-Oromo native narrative. This is violent on its own. This is something that all Oromos should not take lightly. This guy will cause a problem because he has a huge, microphone, which is the Economist and the Guardian. He's able to shape the global view of the Oromo protest. So for him to publicly have this issue with an Oromo scholar about a term that is historic is problematic. What's next? Saying that Ethiopia was built on genocide, bloodshed of the indigenous population is somehow equated to you're saying you're anti-Amhara? No. We have to push back on this. This guy is violent. This is a violent tendency that no, we cannot, we must push back on this. It impacts Eritrea as well. I'll show you how, but this guy is problematic in the Horn of Africa, and how he shapes narrative is very troubling. So for him to equate it as ethnic dog whistle, what's next? Saying that the original settlers that settled in Addis Ababa committed genocide? Is that ethnic dog whistle? That is not ethnic dog whistle. That is a matter of history. Again, the issue of the Oromo protest and nation's nationality, it is nothing against the Amhara people. The poor Amhara people have nothing to do with this. Their culture, their lovely culture, their beautiful culture has nothing to do with this. They're great people. The problem is the Abyssinian class, the political class, from Menelik to now, to Abiy. That's always been the situation. Who speaks on the behalf of the poor royal farmers? The top intellectual, the Abyssinian intellectual in Addis Ababa. So he's associating issue of critical history, pretty much examining the roles of the Abyssinian political class as a way to say this is ethnic dog whistle. This is dangerous. We have to push back on this because he can weaponize this later on to demonize Oromo nationalism and Oromia and its right to be sovereignty. Its right to be its own nation state within the Ethiopian settler state. Okay? I'm serious. This guy is dangerous. And Oromos have to be cautious in how you just let this go. No, this is very dangerous. He is very pretty much bullying this individual, a noted Oromo scholar, from speaking about a term that he's well known, he's well versed in. It is not an ethnic anti-Amharu dog whistle that he's trying to frame it. That's another thing. Okay, these type of people like Tom Gardner, they're part of that Addis Ababa bubble. Okay, anybody who is, even if you're white, if you're black, you go to Addis Ababa, right? So Addis Ababa, it's a bubble of the Abyssinian settler class, the original people who came as invaders, as somebody that is not part of this land, that is indigenous. They're not indigenous to this land. They are from the north. So you have people who are from NGOs, UN agencies, African Union, various international business people come into Addis Ababa. Who are the gatekeepers to speak on the behalf of Ethiopia? Who present these mythology, this idea? What is Ethiopia? It is the Abyssinian urban class. So he is pretty much taking their side and antagonizing an Oromo nationalist or an Oromo individual or scholar. So this is pretty much, he is defending the Abyssinian settler urban intellectual or liberal class in Addis Ababa, and how they view history, and how they view Oromia, and how they view Oromo nationalists, how they view the scholars' views and historical take. This is it. This is an issue of, you're not really speaking pretty much from journalistic. You're looking at it from a biased view. You're pretty much being biased to a certain class in Addis Ababa and their privilege for a century, their narrative, their mythology, their view of the world. So when you speak like this, you're sounding exactly like the Abyssinian settler class in Addis Ababa. Their violent history, they're pretty much whitewashing their historic role of wiping out indigenous people and killing them and stealing their land. We should not apologize for this. It is similar for outsiders who listen in. What he's doing is just look at this. You know, the original European colonizers that came to North America and pretty much pushed out into indigenous land, wiping them out, killing them. just committing horrible crimes against the indigenous population as they pretty much acquire their land. Imagine if you had those original people take pride in that. There was a term to describe it. You can call them settler colonial people, violent European colonizers. You can call them whatever, but that's the truth. These guys were European colonizers. They came from Europe and they colonized the indigenous population. They committed genocide. This is a historical fact. So is this some type of ethnic dog whistle for pointing out that European people who are majority white came to North America and committed genocide? And they pretty much set up these colonial cities, colonial states. So this is the equivalent of what he's doing. He's trying to imagine somebody who is indigenous or somebody who is a black nationalist speaking on their issue, and then a white person is trying to weaponize this issue. Oh, you're being racist, or you're being you're trying to divide us. This is what's happening here. He's trying to frame it in a way to silence the issue and criticizing settler colonialism, the violent history of how Ethiopia was formed and who was active in it. Now, let's go back to what is the original term. The history, obviously, this is recent, 1890s. This is a violent history that the Melik, the Abyssinians from the north, came down and colonized and pretty much wiped out the indigenous population. I'm going to keep saying this. I don't care. I'm going to repeat it until everybody in the world gets it. The people in Abyssinia from the north committed genocide. I'll say this 1,000 times. That's the historic reality. I will not apologize. I will not be silenced by saying this. This guy is a problem. You have to speak up. This guy is a problem. You people in the diaspora who are friends with this guy, who want to be friends with these Abyssinian liberals in the diaspora, I just want to be friends. You are performing for them. You should not. You as an Oromo, as an Eritrean, you should not be friends with these type of people, because they're trying to restrict our own nationalism, our own historical narrative, our own agency. So when this guy pushes back and try to lecture an Oromo scholar, it's a problem. It's a problem for Oromos. It's a problem for Eritrea. It's a problem as a Horn of Africa. I see this as a threat to us too. Whenever he attacks the Oromo scholar, I see it as a threat to Eritrea as well. So you Oromo diaspora individuals who are friends with this guy and even that guy Zacharias, who are best friend with each other, you are pretty much enabling their narrative just because you want to be cool with them. That's not a pass. These guys are causing harm. He has a huge. He works for this. This is a huge platform to pretty much propagate this information. He even has the Guardian. So you have to fight back on this guy. Yeah. So just to quickly highlight, I think the problem is a lot of people have this issue of trying to frame it as this ethnic tension. No, this is a question of colonialism. This is anti-colonial struggle. The problem is the Abyssinians are up north and the Oromos are in the south, and the southern population, other ethnic nationality as well. So because they're close by each other for centuries, therefore to imagine that these people from the north colonized the people from the south is hard to imagine because they're so close to each other. But because an example of the North America, if you look at the North America, you had people from Europe colonize the people indigenous people in North America, right? That is easy to imagine because they're so formed. But because the Abyssinians are close to each other with the Oromo people, it becomes hard to imagine why would they colonize these people. But before 1800, the Abyssinian kingdom itself, it includes the Amharu region and the Tigray. They're the same. They speak different language, but they have the same mythology of Habesha race and supremacy, Solomonic lineage, all that BS. So these two are linked, right? You had the Abyssinians for centuries to the point where they tried to go southern, pretty much go south to colonize and try to expand. The Oromo people in the southern population, even the Somali people, they always push back. So there's always been a check against Abyssinian incursion, expansion down south. The problem is when the European colonialism started to expand in the Horn of Africa, it gave that balance to the Abyssinian. That's the problem. It is all linked to European colonialism. Without European colonialism, we would not have this issue. We, the people of the North, we can handle the Abyssinians. It's like fighting with brass knuckles. You take these brass knuckles, the Abyssinians, we could check these guys. And the Oromos can check them, the Somalis can check them, and that. The problem is you had these tensions, historical issues between different kingdoms, and the Europeans pretty much decided to give weapon to one that has expansionist aims. That's what is the problem with Abyssinians. They were given weapons, so therefore we had to have a century of attempts to colonize and try to pretty much have a greater Ethiopia. That is include Eritrea, that includes the Somali region, that includes even the southern part of Kenya. There was a lot of even Sudan. So this is an ideology of a political class that want to control and dominate the Horn of Africa, not just Eritrea, not just Oromia. It includes Somalia as well. It includes Eastern Sudan. It includes Kenya as well. So they had this greater empire they want to impose on the region. So what the Europeans have done through Menelik is give him weapons, give him diplomatic access, give him all this, mythology to be propagated to the world. In addition to that, when he passed away, Haile Selassie, they gave him this, reinvented this image of Ethiopia. And the global audience views Ethiopia through this lens. It is associated with the British monarch. There's this romantic idea of Ethiopia that was pretty much fabricated and embellished. Starting from the British, 1890, and the French, and so on. So that's something that people have to be aware of. This term itself is not anti-Amharu. It's a historic term. It is pretty much for the original settler class who had arms, who were there not just as soldiers. They were there as priests, teachers, those who pretty much were there to impose settler colonialism by violent means. They were the original villagers. How are you going to collect tax? How are you going to impose this idea in the system of the settler colonialism? You do it through weapon. You do it through the barrel of the gun. That's what these guys only could understand, the violence. It's Abyssinian fundamentalism is a violent ideology. It is only understand massacre. It only understand looting. It only understand exploiting others' history and co-opting it and then taking it as yours. It only understand violent means. And so it must be opposed. It is anti-African. It's anti-black. It is pretty much working for imperialism. It is pretty much built on exploitation of slave laborers, of poor farmers, and stealing their land. This is an ideology that is pretty much anybody can be familiar with, that has an issue of class, has an issue of imperialism, that has an issue of colonialism. This is all connected. So that's it. That is the point on the Nefentge system. Again, I'm going to butcher this Amharic term. This is a colonial language. I don't understand it. I don't even speak it. I don't even like talking about it. So yeah, let's go back to Tom Gardner. Okay, this guy has a problematic past and track record, and it pretty much applies to Eritrea. He wrote this piece in 2018, Why Eritrea is Called Africa's North Korea. And here he's saying that this has real life, the term has real life consequences. What about the fact that you label Eritrea the North Korea of Africa? Does not that have any real life consequences? This guy is just like reckless. He knows what he's doing. And he is pretty much an expression of the Abyssinian urban class within Addis Ababa. That urban class that is pretty much, that pushes out the mythology of a greater Ethiopia, which is hostile to Eritrean nationalism, that has this hostile view of the Horn of Africa where only the Abyssinians have to be supreme. So how can you say you have this issue with this term, but you are the one that is always pushing why Eritrea is called the Africa's North Korea? First of all, this is something that has been propagated for years, and his program has brainwashed a lot of people. That is a lot of something to unpack. North Korea itself has a lot of history that people are not aware of. Why is like you have to pretty much dig in and deconstruct the history of North Korea, and why do they have this nuclear weapon? Why are they so defensive? Because they had a huge atomic bomb dropped on them. Half of their population was wiped out by Washington. So North Korea itself is not the enemy. It's not the issue. Even to be called Eritrea's North Korea, Africa's North Korea, is no problem. It's just the way it's framing. Why is this? Why is this a problem? Why Tom Gardner has pushed this out from Addis Ababa? Because in the liberal eyes, in this, the economist, pretty much the economist, anybody who is well read, who understand that the position of the economist is pretty much pushing out conservative, neoliberal, pretty much an established, the people who want to push out the IMF, World Bank type of prescription for the third world, very hostile to the third world states, right? So everybody's aware of that. So for this audience, if the economist is really talking positive about any state, it's a problem. So obviously, the economist is not going to be very friendly toward the Eritrean state. It is calling it the or North or Africa. It is very. This is. Isaias Afwerki is a problem, yes. PFJ is a problem, but this is not a green light for you to pretty much go recklessly open your mouth about Eritrea to this level. This is reckless. If you speak badly about the term that Oromos are using, you cannot use this against Eritrea. You purposely are trying to demonize the Eritrean state, and that's a problem. So how can you be saying that you have an issue with this term? Has this term itself has real life consequences, and you yourself have used these framing of calling Eritrea the Africa's North Korea. You're a hypocrite. You purposely are doing this. You're not talking from the impartial, neutral journalist trying to get the truth out. No, you are propagating State Department angle here, and also the Abyssinian ruling class, not ruling class, but the Abyssinian settler class in Addis Ababa. So I would almost have to say no, push back. This guy's a problem, and it's a problem too. And his connection, his association. Like I mentioned, he is friends with Zacharias. Okay, these two elements. And I keep saying the Oromo diaspora, these people who are presented on Al Jazeera, even the Turkish media. The last 3 weeks, the two individual women who pretty much I respect them as personally. There's no issue with them. It's just they're friends with him. These two elements they're friends with him. These two are able to propagate this ethnic unrest, ethnic conflict narrative that is covert. That's pretty much covert. That you're not able to. If you're just reading the article, you're thinking that he's presenting both sides. No, they really are manufacturing consent for the state and the establishment, the empire, by trying to frame this issue of Oromo protest. There's violence, there's property burning. No, this is not the issue. The Oromo is under attack. That's the bigger issue. The Oromo is under attack. Oromo politicians and their leaders are under attack. Their artist is dead. How is this an issue of ethnic conflict? Oromo is literally under attack right now. So these two are enemy of this Oromo protest. I don't care. I'm not going to apologize. Long term, these people are not your friends. The Oromo diaspora who are liberal, who try to be friends with these people, they're going to cause you trouble. At the end of the day, these not your friends. If you, as somebody who supports Oromia, I can only warn you, give you consequences. I cannot dictate who your friends are or not. But if you want to listen to me, you can. These two individuals have hostility toward the Eritrean state. They have hostility toward the Oromo struggle, Oromo nationalism. So be careful, and you have to push back. Not the pretty much the loud-mouthed Abyssinians in the diaspora who are extreme. You have to appreciate them because they're publicly saying these words. They're honest about their opinion. They hate Oromos, they hate Eritreans, they hate Eritrean nationalism, they hate Somali nationalism, they hate everybody. That's honest. Thank you very much. You're being very honest. The problem with these individuals like this guy is very covert. You're not gonna see it. He's not gonna publicly say, I love Melek or I love Johannes. He is gonna frame it in a way to make it seem like he's balanced. Oh, he's criticizing. No, that is slick. That is sly. That is fox-like. That's cunning. He's very cunning. So be careful. Don't let these people write about Oromo. Let Oromos write about Oromia. Let let anybody who is Oromo intellectual write about Oromia and what's happening inside. Do not let these gatekeepers define Oromia. Do not let them define Oromo protest. So yeah, like I mentioned, their whole emphasis, whole narrative is trying to de-emphasize the state violence, not give any historical context. And there are other like angles that they're doing too. Let's see here. Another thing is, if you go look at the people who pretty much are agreeing with him are majority Abyssinian. Look, all these people are Abyssinian. Look at this. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? These guys are violent. They're violent. They're all like agreeing with somebody who is white, ridiculing, trying to lecture an Oromo intellectual, an Oromo scholar. Look at these people. Who is agreeing with this guy? Mostly Abyssinian extremists. All of them. Look at the imperial flag. What does that tell you? They agree with him. They agree with that other guy too, Zacharias and his friend. So what are you guys talking about? Like, you're making an excuse for Tom Gardner, even the guy Zacharias. They're not your friends. They're not the friends of nations and nationalities. They are pro-empire. They are pro-establishment, pro-Abyssinian urban class. They want to give that worldview from that point of view. Not the Oromo outside of Addis Ababa, not the Sedamite outside of Addis Ababa, not the Somali outside of Addis Ababa. No, it's all about that kitfo eating the urban class in Addis Ababa. Not the Amharu, but the political class who are pretty much enriched by the settler colonialism for generation. It is not anti-Amharu to point this out. You are a settler. You are a settler people. You originally are not from there. It is not your land. It is not violent to say this. No Oromo should not be apologizing this. It is not violent. Now, it is not to say that anybody who's Amharu who's living there is an enemy of Oromos. That's not what I'm heading toward. It is pretty much make sure that the historical narrative it is defended. Oromo people are very not hostile. Oromo people are very friendly. They have let all these Amharu people live, even Tigray people live in Addis Ababa, even the Oromia region. There's no issue. The Oromo people are very peace-loving people. They're not hostile. They're very welcoming and very engaging. Their history, it is not violent. They're not conquerors. They're not colonizers. They don't pretty much impose their ideas and identity onto you. There's no somebody calling, if you go to Tigray, there's no Oromo people that much. Even if you go to Amhara region, there's not that many who are there, who have businesses, or it's not that many. It's only the North people who are coming in Oromia, and they have been welcome. That's not the issue here. The issue is the historical framing. The issue is make sure that the Oromos actually are benefiting from the resources that is their land, that is their resources. You can live there as Amharu, you can live there as Tigray people. There's no issue there. I think there's no issue there. It's just the Oromo people have the right to have control, self-rule, own their land, just like anybody else. That is the main issue here. They have the right to speak their language. They have the right to own their land. They have the right to self-rule and have their own system. That's it. So nobody should be apologizing to anybody who tried, like Tom Gardner, who tried to push his narrative. You're trying to connect it to dog whistle. It's not. This is not dog whistle. This is historical reality. No Oromo should be apologizing. No Oromo should be apologizing for centering your Oromo nationalism. No Eritrean should be apologizing for defending the state, defending Eritrean state. No Oromo should be upset or feeling some type of way emotionally because this guy tried to associate it with a dog whistle. No. Or he's trying to associate Eritrea with North Korea. No. Yes, Isaias Afwerki is horrible. PFDJ has failed Eritrea, but you have no right to demonize the Eritrean state. You have crossed the red line. And all these elements and the diaspora, the opposition elements have let you speak recklessly about Eritrea. No more of that. You cannot recklessly try to lecture an Oromo about his history. You cannot lecture us about the Eritrean state. You cannot lecture us about our nationalism. You cannot lecture us about our history in the region. So no more of that. All right, let's move forward to the other issue. Let's see here. Yeah, so I just want to bring this up. Has anybody have? I don't know if you guys are could see this. Let me just zoom out. Just a second. So in 2016, there was this convention that leadership, Oromo leadership convention that was held in 2016 in Atlanta, which is really historic. And this is something that earlier I mentioned that the danger of not having a vanguard movement to lead the Oromo struggle right now. Jawar is neutralized, Bekele is neutralized, OLF is neutralized. The only thing that's active is OLA, but there is no political organization or mass organization to centralize everything into one goal, an objective. Everything is scattered right now. The diaspora is scattered. So what I noticed is I observed that the diaspora, it has two factions. One wants to focus on just key issue of human rights violation of just releasing prisoners, which is fine. That's fine. But that's just only one key issue. It's just single issue. And then there's others who are focused on decolonization, the importance of sovereignty, the importance of land, the importance of historical grievances. There's no way to combine both. It's just, both have to be combined. There has to be multi-strategy for the diaspora. And then in addition to that, there are elements who want to support the self-defense of Oromia internally, which is right. Oromia is under attack. This is a fact. So Oromia has a right to self-defense, just like Tigray has weapons. Amhara region, they have weapons. So let's normalize this idea that other regions have the ability to defend themselves internally, and the Oromia region should have the right to have self-defense. I am not gonna apologize for that. That's the reality. The state is heavily trying to target Oromia because it's weak. It's not able to defend itself. The Tigray has its weapons. Amhara region has its own weapons, but the Oromia region, because it is doesn't have a vanguard movement to pretty much centralize self-defense, pretty much internal self-defense, it's vulnerable. And another thing is, without a vanguard, an Oromo vanguard to lead this, you have external actors and forces like TPLF. As anybody's aware, I have no issue with Oromia and Tigray having this connection. That's fine. We Eritreans should have a connection with Tigray as well. There's no issue there. I cannot dictate or oppose the Oromo leadership from having connection with TPLF if it serves the self-interest of Oromia. I can only give you a warning. This is not going to work long term. This is going to backfire. There will be heavy price for this, for Oromia to sell itself to TPLF. There will be consequences. The TPLF has no interest in the liberation of Oromia. It only wants to return to power in Addis Ababa. This is the brutal truth. I cannot oppose this alliance. If you guys want to do this, that is your business. This is an internal business between Oromos to discuss and just figure this out. But at the end of the day, what works for the self-interest of Oromia, it is the interest of Oromia. I cannot oppose it. But looking at it as an outsider, I could say that the TPLF has no interest in the liberation, pretty much of Oromia, and making sure that Oromia has its, sovereignty. It does not have an interest. It is only interested in using the Oromo protest to pretty much regain momentum, to pressure Addis Ababa, the Abiy, and also to pretty much pressure the Amhara region and actually Isaias Afwerki as well. So it is not interested in the liberation of Oromia. It is interested in playing power struggle with Abiy, Isaias. That's it. It is not interested. The 28 years of track record has shown that TPLF has been violent, has stolen land from Oromos, has killed farmers, has killed students. That's a matter of fact. You can't, if you cannot scrub this out, you cannot try to erase these videos that show the history of TPLF in Oromia. I'm sorry, that's the reality. I cannot apologize. If you must do it, go ahead, but there will be consequences long term for Oromia. If you must do it, go ahead, do what you got to do. But at the end of the day, TPLF is a problem. It's a problem for Oromia. you can be independent of TPLF. If you had like Jawar Muhammad, who is very savvy, and he saw the long term consequences of working with TPLF, and he was trying to make an alliance in the South. Look at it from a federal pretty much coalition, right? The You have the Oromo, who have the largest Oromo population in Ethiopia. That is can pretty much guarantee a huge chunk of Ethiopia within the federal system, right? And the second one is the Amhara region, and the third one is the Somali region. Fourth one is the Sidamai region, and fifth one is Tigray. So you're skipping all these people to go to TPLF. If you want an equal system where everybody's fairly accepted, that you have to be in alliance with all these the largest group, the Sidamai, Somali, and the Southern people. That's something Johar Muhammad was doing, Michaela was doing, and they were hesitant to make an alliance with TPLF. They were engaging them, not trying to start an issue with them, but there was some type of strategy, tactical alliances that were taking shape. And Johar Muhammad, I wish he was released. I really wish he was a voice of reason to understand there is a problem with TPLF. It is not interested in liberation of Oromia. Johar Muhammad understand that, and I appreciate that, brother. And I miss him that he's in jail right now. And he was a voice of reason. You have to be careful how you engage TPLF. They have the political history and the pretty much the connection. It is not farewell long term from Oromia. Like I mentioned last time, look at the political culture of Oromia. It is one of egalitarian system. It is one of democratic system. The TPLF come from a system that is Abyssinian. I think the term itself, people try to apply it to the Amhara people. It also applies to Tigrayan ruling class. When I say Abyssinian, I'm not talking about just Amhara ruling class. I'm talking about the Tigray. Meles Zenawi is Abyssinian. TPLF is an Abyssinian organization. I'm sorry. Anybody who is worshiping Johannes Ras Alula, who is pretty much expanded north into Eritrea, and Johannes committed genocide. So we Eritreans know these Abyssinians. We have a history of pretty much they committed genocide on our land. We have an experience with these guys. So if you don't want to trust our experience in telling you these is dangerous, what the consequences of TPLF alliances, you don't have to listen to that. But as brothers, we love Oromia. We want you to have pretty much have self-liberation, self-rule. But understand the consequences of TPLF is it has self-interest, political interest that is not of interest for Oromia. As a final note, let me just say this. Who is the oppressed nationalities? The oppressed nationalities are people in the southern population. The Oromo, the largest one, the Sidamai, Somali, and others, all the southern nations. In addition to that, Afar. Tigray and Amharu are not the oppressed nationalities. You might make an argument that the Tigray people were pretty much had issues of political struggle within Abyssinia. Yes, they were treated as secondary power, as secondary people. But that's not the same experience as the southern population, the Oromos, and what they experienced genocide. The people of Tigray never had an issue about their identity being wiped out. The Tigray people have never had an issue of wanting to impose their culture, or their history being erased or imposed. They don't have that issue. I think we're confusing this tension between Amhara region and Tigray as an issue, as connecting it to the issue of the oppressed nationalities. It's not the same. This is a ruling class struggle between the Tigray ruling class and also the Amhara ruling class. And that is taken fold as well. That is an important context of why TPLF is supporting the oppressed nationalities. It is for self-interest, power gain. It is not meant to, it is pretty much to check and neutralize the Amhara region, its number one enemy, and also to check and neutralize Eritrea, its number one enemy. That is itself. So we have to pretty much define who is in oppressed nationalities. It is not the North. Besides the Afar regions in the North, majority of them in the South are the oppressed nationality. I have nothing against the Tigray people, but you guys are not oppressed nationalities. You guys didn't have an issue of your language being erased. There's no issue of committing genocide. No Abyssinian ruler has colonized Tigray. Nobody has killed, massacred Tigray people. So Abyssinian system, it is about ruling class, whether if it's they speak Tigrinya or whether they speak Amharic. We have to associate these. So these Oromo intellectuals who try to make an alliance with the North are gonna give Oromia another cycle of issues. You have to be independent of TPLF. You have to be independent of Abiy. This is going to be a repeated case. It's going to be Oromo Protest 3.0, Oromo Protest 4.0, because you have to have a ruling class that is pretty much independent of the North. You don't need the North. You don't need Tigray. You have all the population. You have Sidama. You have Solimali region. So another thing is the Oromo population have to be careful how you engage with the Amharus. The Amharus are not the enemy. I think TPLF self-interest is to have Oromia and Amharo region to fight each other. You have to be careful. Don't fall for that trap. Yes, there is Abyssinian extremists, but do not associate it with the Amharo region. That is the biggest trick that people have. It is not. Do not confuse the Abyssinian political elite with the Amharo people. They're not the enemy. Amharo people are not the enemy. Even Tigray people are not the enemy. I think the TPLF ruling class are not an expression of Tigray. You have to associate it with the people. You have to be careful how you associate it with the people. So another thing is, I'll leave this alone. I'm going too long. The issue of Oromo, the Oromo population and the diaspora. Who is speaking on behalf of the Oromo protest? Which class? So you have an Oromo population in the diaspora who's speaking on behalf, right? They're mostly middle-class people who left Addis Ababa. There's nobody speaking for the royal population outside of Addis Ababa. So their politics is an expression of their class interest. So what type of liberation do you want? Do you want to secure your class interest in Addis Ababa, or do you want the poor royal farmers to get their land? Do you want this to become a class struggle? That is something that the Oromo, even the Eritrean people, have to understand. Who speaks on your behalf, whether it's Eritrea or Oromia, these people in the diaspora are trying to hijack something that is a movement on the ground toward their political and economic and class interest. So check who these people are from. Are they from the Addis Ababa Oromos who are Abyssinians and who speaking on behalf of the Oromo struggle? What is their interest? So this is the importance of having an Oromo vanguard to check and filter individuals who speak on behalf of the Oromo protest. So that's it. We have to be careful about making sure that there is a class focus, class conscious Oromo population in the diaspora that can speak not just the Addis Ababa politics. Who cares about election? Who cares about the constitution? The biggest issue is making sure sovereignty, self-defense, self-rule. That's number one rule. Who cares about reforms? That doesn't do anything. At the end of the day, having an election does not do anything for the material condition of the poor Oromo farmers. We have to return their land. We have to return the wealth and resources on the behalf of the Oromos outside of the Addis Ababa. Oromia it's bigger than Addis Ababa. You have a diaspora population speaking on behalf of it, pretty much defanging it, the issue of land, the issue of sovereignty, the issue of class. Make sure you have the right people speaking on them, the class conscious, love their country, who are independent of TPLF, who are independent of Washington. You need a powerful vanguard movement who can speak and move these things and make sure that there's self-defense internally, make sure that they can maybe support OLA. That's it. Just be careful who speaks on behalf of Oromia. And then also, let's talk about the Oromo charter that was pretty much started. This is something I think Jawahar Muhammad and a couple of leaders, this is really great. This is something that we need, I think the Oromo community probably can talk about, but there needs to be a charter explaining what is the demand. If you have vague terms about, oh, we just need to release these prisoners, that's not enough. That's just a single issue. That's liberalism. You have to mobilize people on a bigger issue, class liberation, Make sure that the land belongs to the people. Sovereignty, self-rule, not just elections, not just releasing two individuals, which is fine, that's important. But the bigger issue is who is speaking on behalf of the royal population, because majority of these people who are speaking on autonomy issues come from like pretty much wealthy people who left Addis Ababa or left Oromia, who are pretty much of a certain high middle class. You're not hearing a voice from the Oromo population who are royal. You're not going to hear that. So how can anybody speak on behalf of Oromo if they're not connected to the people outside of Addis Ababa? Oromia is not Addis Ababa. I mean, Addis Ababa it belongs to Oromia, but what about the royal population? That is the biggest segment population that must be at the center of this. Okay, we cannot just focus on constitution reforms, shifts about elections and playing nice. Yes, human rights violation must be recorded. All this stuff about releasing prisoners, that's important. That's key issue. But the bigger issue is liberation of Oromia. Whether it's to stay within the federalism, whether it's to stay, whatever system that is. If he's trying to stay within Ethiopia, that's fine. I think that's a key strategy. But we have to make sure you have the right people. You have to make sure that you have Oromo vanguard to lead the struggle. And right now, because Johar Mohammed is neutralized, you got Bekele neutralized, you got the OLF neutralized, there's nobody. And then that's why you have TPLF center themselves, trying to influence, trying to antagonize the Oromo population toward being hostile to Amhara region. Does not benefit anybody. Keep your focus on this. This is not lecturing you anybody. This is the same for Eritreans too. The Eritrean people in the diaspora are pretty much confused right now because originally they supported Oromo protest when TPLF was in power. Right now, because of PFDJ and Isaias Afwerki, they're very hesitant from supporting Oromo protests because they see this as an attack against the peace deal. That's not the problem here. You as an Eritreans, this is not an attack on the peace deal. Real life Oromo people are being killed by Abiy. We must defend the Oromo peace. I mean, the Eritrea and Ethiopia peace deal, that process in itself. But at the end of the day, you have to recognize Abiy is killing Oromos. If you as an Eritrean cannot recognize that, then that's a problem. You are pretty much aligning yourself with the Abyssinians. That is the biggest threat, the Abyssinian system. Not TPLF is a threat. It's a minor threat. The biggest threat is the Abyssinian system. TPLF is gone. Abiy is gone, the system will be in place. The system will still continue to be not recognize the Eritrean independence, not be hostile to Eritrean nationalism, be hostile to Oromo nationalism. So you're not understanding how Abiy is pretty much hostile to Oromo nationalism. It is pretty much indirectly it will be hostile to Eritrean nationalism in the future. So we must defend the state, the Eritrean state will also defend the peace between Addis Ababa and Asmara. But this has nothing to do with Isaias. This has nothing to do with Abiy. So the bigger threat is the Abyssinian system. And you must be consistent in being principled. If you supported the Oromo protest in 2014 to 2018, you must also support it now. Why are you hesitating? There's no issue for this. You as Eritrean people should be supporting Oromo protest. You are aligning yourself with these elements who don't recognize our independence, who don't recognize us as an existence, who don't recognize our independent history. Just because you have issue with TPLF should not stop you from having a principled stand. Stand with the Oromo people. Don't stand with Isaias. Isaias is just reckless. This guy has lost it. He is not a revolutionary. He has failed Eritrea. I don't gain nothing of it. I defend the Eritrean state. I defend the Eritrean revolution, but I will not defend Isaias Afwerki. PFDJ, it's over. Wadina. This idea that this cover that Isaias has for 30 years, he's a former fighter, therefore you cannot have any criticism against him. No. He has failed Eritrea. This strategy that is pretty much set in place against TPLF and aligning yourself with elements who are nations and nationalities, anti-Oromo, it is not the right strategy. It is not a strategy for the Horn of Africa. I'll leave this on this. The current strategy that Abiy and Isaias have of trying to counter and neutralize TPLF has not worked. How does pretty much antagonizing Oromo population, and then pretty much giving an opening for TPLF to have access to the Oromo population and the diaspora. You're helping them. You gave them a lifeline. This strategy does not work. So another thing is, you could have pushed out a talks with Oromo leadership, reset it. You could have been a voice of reason to say, you know what, this is not needed. There needs to be a conversation between Amhara region and Oromia. That could have been a strategy. You could have calmed things down. There could have been a better strategy to calm, and the strategy against TPLF did not work. Because at the end of the day, you had an Oromo politician like Jawar Mohammed Bekele who were willing to have an alliance to engage with the Amhara people, the Amhara region. But you jailed him. Jawar Mohammed is a moderate. He's not a super nationalist. And you jailed the most moderate individual. Like, if you are jailing Jawar Mohammed, then he is the most reasonable person to negotiate with you. So it shows you that the violence of Abiy. At the end of the day, me opposing this violent tendency of Abiy does not mean I oppose the peace between Eritrea and Ethiopia. That's a separate situation. That is independent of Isaias Afwerki and Abiy. So Oromos, please support the peace deal. Do not let these elements try to antagonize Eritrea. Do not let this element antagonize Amhara region. We are your friends. The only issue that we all have a class, political class that is in Addis Ababa, the political class who are anti-Oromo, anti-Eritrea, pretty much nations and nationalities. This is a common struggle. So, dear brothers and sisters from the Oromo community, please be careful and not letting these TPLF elements who are from Lula Solomon pretty much put out conspiracy theory that there's Eritrean involvement in the killing of Oromos, or trying to antagonize to make you hate Eritrea and Eritreans. Be careful. Be careful of letting these elements demonize Amhara region or Amhara people. Be tactical. Don't let your emotion and these people ride you up. Be calm, and at the end of the day, you'll have a right to self-defense. Defend yourself, but be smart in the way you do this. Be careful. I think the most important thing is not letting external forces trying to push Oromo protests toward their interest. I will support Oromia, whatever you have to do, your self-interest in the alliance with TPLF, but I will have to give you this concern. Lastly, I just want to remind you guys the history of the Eritrean people. I think I'll leave this here. Just a second, guys. There you go. So as a last message, we Eritreans collectively, there's nobody in the north. This is for the Oromos and all the nations and nationalities, all oppressed nationalities. We are not the enemy. Just look at our history. We are the only one in the north who experienced Abyssinian genocide. From Ras Alula to Johannes to Selassie and the Derg, even the TPLF. So we understand the two faction within the Abyssinia, the Tigray ruling class and then the Amhara ruling class. So we both know the nature, and we have this experience with these guys. So we understand it. We understand when you say you Oromos are not Habesha. We understand that. We understand the violence of Ethiopianism and the way in saying we are one, and then how it erases you. We understand that. We understand that violence. So I'm not trying to tell you trust Isaias Afwerki. He is horrible. Or PFDJ, they are horrible. They're the wrong people. They're reactionary. They just failed Eritrea. They failed the Horn of Africa. But in regards to the Eritrean state, we're not the enemy. The Eritrean people are not the enemy. You must view us as a friend of Oromia and as a friend of nation nationalities, because collectively, Eritreans have experienced the horrific crimes of genocide, colonialism from both political class. The Tigrayan, like I mentioned, Ras Alula, Johannes, and also Selassie and Derg. They try to impose Amharic language on us. We have that experience. We had attempts to steal our land, exploit it, and to colonize it. We had that experience. There's no other people in the north, not the Amhara region, not in Tigray region. So this idea that TPLF is trying to center itself in the Oromo protest as a voice of nations and nationality, or as a gatekeeper of Oromo protest, is a problem. It will backfire. You don't have to believe me, but it will see. You will have a chance to see the nature of TPLF. Like I mentioned, Isaias has failed us as Eritreans. PFDJ has failed us. But be warned about TPLF. TPLF is a problem. It is self-interest, it's political culture. It is not for the interest of Oromia. That's all. It's a warning. You know, you can support it and give alliance with TPLF. That is your right. I am not here to dictate and impose it. Do what must work for you as your self-interest. That's it. Thank you.